Hello?
Go for it.
Oh, I think TestNG is like a framework for Java programming language.
Okay, so TestNG is a framework for Java, right? So it's created with Java. Okay, fine. But what is it? What is the purpose of that?
I think it makes the test like more organized.
Right. And what else? Anybody else want to help with this? So TestNG can generate report, right? So it's a proper report. That's number one. This is the biggest seller, right? Because remember, when you write your test and you execute them, you have to create a report. And if you have to create a report yourself, you will have to write a lot of code, a lot of extra code unnecessarily for no reason, right? But if you use TestNG framework, you don't have to write those extra code because TestNG will take care of the report. Have you anybody seen report for TestNG?
No.
Okay, and then you can also execute failed test cases separately. That's one of the other, which not that you cannot do with this Cucumber. Cucumber also does the same thing, but you can failed test can be executed separately. What does that mean? That means um, if you ran your test, let's say 1,000 test cases, and then you have 100 failures out of 1,000, then you can rerun that 100 test case because maybe those 100 test case failed because you're running so many test cases at the same time and there was some sort of collision. So you rerun this failed test before you generate the report. So what's happening is that out of 100 now, um, maybe like let's say 90 passes and 10 fails. Um, so you have less work. That means you have to investigate only 10 before you want to find any sort of bugs. Okay. So do you guys understand that what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay, so typically when we run it on Jenkins, right? So Jenkins is a server. It's like pretty much cloud for for let's say CI/CD, continuous integration, but
Oh,
we use it to run our automated tests. So if you run it on cloud, and let's say 1,000 test cases out of 1,000, of course you're going to see some fail, right? So whichever fails, let's say even if it's 10 failure, right? 10 test cases fail out of 1,000. That should be pretty good, right? These 10 you can rerun them again before creating the report. So what's going to happen is um, after you rerun them, maybe one or two will fail, right? If it is a true failure, it will fail, right? So two failed after that, right? So now you literally have two test cases to investigate, and all of them are fine. Imagine every day, every morning you go to work and you have to look at the test report and you have to investigate failures, right? You go into work and you look at the Junkin, you say, okay, how many failed, and only look at the failed test and see why they are failing. Versus you have 10, you have to investigate 10. That will take you a couple hours. This will take you maybe 30 minutes, right? So it's all about time because if this takes a couple hours, your day is already gone, right? You got 2 hours done out of your 8 hours. You got 6 hours for a meeting, right? So you will have 6 hours meetings, and then you will have 4 hours of work per day, right? That's like I mean, good average. Like you're not gonna have pure 8 hours of work. You're never gonna have that, right? Because you'll have meetings and other things that you need to go into. You'll also have downtime for yourself. So again, if you write your test with Java and Selenium plain, you're not going to be able to do this. You have to write separate code, maybe pages is worth of code, for you to be able to do what this TestNG is making be able to do for you without having to write any sort of extra code. Now, when you write extra code, what do you have to do? Why? Okay, so let's say you made a decision. You're going to write the code yourself, what do you have to do if you write the code? You'll have to maintain, right? That code needs to be maintained. So over and over, you have to revisit and see, what needs to be changed. But most importantly, you're reinventing the wheel. You are trying to create another TestNG, right? Instead of just using TestNG itself. So that's what it is. Um, but I'm not trying to say, okay, TestNG is the best, but this is probably the second best to my knowledge. If you're gonna create a framework and nobody is agreeing to something called BDD, which we are about to touch after this, then we should probably go with TestNG, right? All right, so let's talk about some of the annotation. Again, like I said, TestNG generates reports. It has multiple test cases that can be grouped, right? So how do you group TestNG tests, right? How do you group them, right? Remember we had the TestNG XML. So let me just go into let me just open my, okay, IntelliJ. Okay, and okay. So the report that we just talked about, right? Report should be in this folder, target, and let me see if that is actually generated anything at all. I didn't run anything. So I'll have to run it real quick to show you guys the report. Let me just run this. I hope it runs. Oh God. Okay, I just have to probably put something. I just deleted the TestNG file from my computer, so now it's upset. Okay, so we're gonna have to set this up, but um, the report is actually going to be on your target file, right? This is where the report comes, and generated source I think is going to be inside of generated either test source. Testers will have one report, and you'll have generated source will have another report. This one will have JSON, and this one will have HTML. The HTML one is the one that you want to send it to your manager. If you want to do more analytics, you can take that JSON and then use that for any plugins, right? So if you have Junkin, then you can use a plugin to make the report better. So we'll take a look how the report looks like. Let's just dive into the annotation before we can do that. So there are a few annotation that we did so far, and there are a lot of annotation that we didn't do. And so let me just bring up and pretty much write them here, right here. So the one of the annotation is called, let me just test cases, boom. Okay, there we go. All right. So far we did before and after tests, right? And then we have a test. There is something called priority. So in test, you're gonna be using priority, and somebody tell me what it is and what does it do if you have looked into it already.
I think Julba, it's in this way you can prioritize the test, which one should run first, and then second one, third one, something like that.
Right. So suppose let's say you have another test. I'm just gonna copy this just to make that into second test. So this is your second test, and you mark that as there you go. So this needs a closing, and this doesn't need this extra one. Okay. And then pages There we go. Okay. So we got two tests, right? One is priority 0, and the other one is priority 1, right? So which one do you think is going to run first?
Zero.
0.
Right. So basically, priority you want to use in order to make your test sequential. For example, let's say test case 1, it needs to be run first because it creates, let's say, the user, right? And then test case 2 uses that user and then do something, right? So therefore, you should be using the test case 1 as priority, giving it to the highest priority, right? I guess the number that you put into is the priority level. So if I put like this is 1 and the other one is 2, let's say, where is the other one go? So let's say I put 2 right here. What do you think is going to happen now? Which one has the highest priority?
One.
Right. So the first one is going to run, right? So it is going to start from 0 and then all the way to whichever number you have, right? So if you want a sequential, then you can start from 0 and then you go to, like, let's say if you have 10 test cases, you can go 10. So this is the way you are prioritizing your tests to see which runs first and which one will run second. So you guys can try that on your script and see how it is. All right, the next is, let's look into, all right, and how many of you guys know how to, so we set it up with Maven, right? Do you guys know how to set up TestNG without Maven? Obviously, like at work, you're gonna be setting everything up in Maven anyway. And I know we didn't touch how to do it without the Maven, so I'm gonna show you real quick before we jump into any other topic. Real, 1 second. Okay, so on your project, right? If you're using IntelliJ, obviously Eclipse will be different. Eclipse, you're gonna just download TestNG through the help, right? Help and marketplace. So if anybody's familiar, you'll know what I'm talking about. Marketplace will definitely have your TestNG. Hold on, let me just go back to, I'm trying to, okay, there we go. So right here, let me see why my thing is upset first. Okay, it doesn't have TestNG. Okay, so I'll go ahead and do that. But right click, and then you need to go into framework support. No. Framework setting. Okay, let's see. Not this. Okay, let's see right here. File, edit. Okay, there you go. Project structure. That's what I was looking for. Okay. In project structure, you're going to click on module, and after that, you have to click on the resource. Let's see. Libraries. Okay. Once you click on this, let me see real quick. Why does it look so different? Oh, there you go. Dependencies. No coffee, so it's really hard for me to navigate. All right. And so you have you click on module, then you click on dependencies, and all you have to do right now, as you can see, Maven is already added, right? And TestNG is missing for me. So all I have to do is, you see the jar right there? All I have to do is get the jar. So let me just go ahead and get this jar from TestNG. All right, let's see which would be a good place. There we go. Maven repository. And then if I can download. POM is right here, and the jar file is right here. So let me just get the jar. Thank you. So right there. So the good thing about this is even if you zip, it will still work. You don't have to unzip it. So let me just go ahead and plus that, click plus. Once I do that, I gotta find this jar. 1 second. Mac. Download. And that's it. So you got your zip right there, apply. And as you can see, Maven was, TestNG was added on the left side immediately, and then click OK. So TestNG is right there. You see right there? It was just added. Okay, let me go back to the framework real quick. So that is how you do your external libraries. What? Okay. Okay, so that's how we doing the adding the TestNG, right? But similarly, you're going to be adding jar files if you don't use if you are not using the Maven, right? So if we don't use Maven, then we will have to use the TestNG. And the way we're doing it is by going into the external files, right? So pretty much file and project structure, you click on module, and then you click on dependency. Once you click on dependencies, you just basically go ahead and click on the plus. Okay, so all of the pom.xml, all of the file that we have right here, as you can see, it's missing probably. Okay, that's just there, but we need to build it. But instead of building it, we go ahead and add it. We went ahead and added the to the local file, right? So even if we delete this right now, it will still work. Okay, somehow my setting changed. 1 second, you guys. Okay, let's see. Enable flat package. Let me just, I'm gonna run it first. Let's see if my TestNG is working properly. Test case, no test case is found. What? It's all messed up because I recently cleaned up my computer and got rid of some of those dependencies that belongs to this framework. Okay. Driver target. Okay. Project structure. Okay. Right. All right. So now the next thing that we want to talk about the annotations, right? So there are lots of annotation in TestNG that we did not touch, right? So for example, and I'm going to write that as a, I'm going to use this as a notepad for us. The next one is before, I guess the very first one is before method. Before method is one, and then followed by after method. Method, right? So we got two of these. This will basically execute it before each method in test cases, right? And that's the first one. The second one will do it after each method in test case, right? So these are specifically relevant when you have a method that you want to execute before each test cases, then you want to be able to use this, okay? And then for interview, as far as the interview goes, you're gonna be explaining those uh, tag names, pretty much these tags, what they do. And the easiest thing is that I wouldn't recommend memorizing. I would say just look at the word itself. That's the easiest way that you can. It's before method, so you can say, it just runs once before each method. That's it, right? For each test case. So just it's easy for you to kind of like read what it is and be able to explain. But if you know a little bit beforehand, it will help. Then we have before suite. Okay, let me use my other. Okay. Before method. Okay, then we are talking about the before suite. So at before suite. So before suite will run before all test case, right? Before any of the test case. So remember, suite means what? Meaning like more than one, right? So before running all of this, if you're trying to run 100 test cases, before running 100 test cases, it will run once. It will run once for all of these 100 test case. So before running the entire suite, it will run once, okay? And similarly, you have after suite. And after suite is the same thing, right? It's running after each suite. That means if your suite has 100 test cases, then it will run after that 100 test cases, okay? And we already covered before test. I'm just not gonna explain that. Before test is basically running before any test is running. After test, same thing, and it will run each time. And then we have, okay, then we have, okay, before group, before group, this should be this. It's a lot of, okay, let me just write them down. It's a lot of annotations after group. After class. That is already covered. Okay. And then lastly, a test. Okay. So I believe these are all of them. Even if you look at it, you know how they work on the first place. Like we already tried with test, we already tried with before test and after test. Now in an interview, they're gonna say, "Are you familiar with the annotation of TestNG?" And then you're going to be starting right away. Yes, I am. And then you're gonna say, well, there are, annotations such as, test, after test, before method, before, and then they will say, okay, wait a minute, but can you explain them to me? All right. Then you can say, well, before method is running before each of the method in a test case. And similar to that, after method is running after. Then we have before suite that runs before the entire suite. And then after suite is pretty much the opposite of before suite. Um, so you want to be able to explain this, right? Again, we know how to implement that. All we have to do is go into our test and apply them right before the test case starts, right before the um, the name of the test case, which is this right here. And based on that, we can execute however test case allows us to do. And these are pretty much test case and TestNG annotations. What else left in TestNG? Let me see if there's any other topic. I don't see anything else. Like TestNG also allows you to run parallel. So, and And also, oh, the important one, data provider, and we can run parallel, which is not like a big deal because parallel execution can be done through Selenium Grid, and I don't want to rely on TestNG for parallel execution because Selenium Grid can do better, right? So, but anyway, um, parallel test. Okay. Now, the only thing I don't, you guys tell me, right? Just make sure you guys let me know, right? Before I move on. Data provider is the only thing I feel like you guys gonna be needing help understanding what it is, right? But these annotations, you guys are fine. These are just simply apply to them. It's just like at test. There is no difference between how you apply, right? But at test takes priority, right? At text takes parameter. This is an optional parameter that at test takes. And if you don't pass it on, you're fine. But if you do pass it on, you have to pass it on this way. Um, Data provider on the other side is different, right? Data provider is basically allows you to parameterize your test, right? And how do you do it? So in data provider, you basically have to, let me just bring up as an example, right? So that way we can, here you go. The way we use data provider is you have your data provider tag. Once you have that, then you naming what's the data provider is, and after that you are returning values, right? So you basically getting information, so getting information from somewhere to pass it on to your test. um, Let me see. So this is just an example right there. Um, so you see how the object has been passed on right here. Um, Similar to that, let me see if there is an example with, um, I'm looking for like a CSV. Okay, this doesn't have it. Let me just look into another example. The provider with Excel, right? Excel, which is pretty much is the one that will, how to use them. Okay, there you go. Okay, this is what I was looking for because, okay, there you go. Automation, blah, blah. Okay. All right. So when you use data provider and you have multiple record of information, so if you're grabbing it from, let's say, Excel, for example, test user one is this, test user, another test user is equal to this, right? Then the test will run how many rows is passing, right? So it will, in this case, it will run 2 times, right? Parameterization, the way it works, the more it works with the data, right? Meaning if you pass on one data, then it will go ahead and run only once, right? If you pass on with, just 2 sets of data, then it will run on two. So data provider, I'm not going to go too deeper because again, our goal is not to get a job in TestNG. And we need to cover the other topic before I can put some people in the market like cucumber. But if you get a chance, you can play with it. Data provider, like for example, the whole code is right here, right? We can do it right now and try to learn, or you can do a little bit of your own research, right? So that will be the last thing for our TestNG anyway. So I'll leave that as a homework. Just learn a little bit about the data provider and how it works. Um, And at work, I don't think you're going to be using TestNG because your resume will have a lot more of BDD framework. So therefore, that is something that we need to cover because we haven't, right? So that's one of the other thing that I'm brushing this class for. But anyway, data provider is a tag that allows you to parameterize your test, and you can run multiple times. This test can be running multiple times using different sets of data that is just being passed on right here. Okay. So now you can use it this way, which is pretty much not taking the information from Excel, or you can take the information from Excel. Is it taking the information from Excel? Okay, new package, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, it is taking from Excel. Okay, so you see username right here, and then based on that, it takes the password and all that right here. You see it's taking the username and password as a parameter and is grabbing data from that Excel sheet right here. Okay, data Excel sheet, username and password. So it is pretty cool. But you're probably gonna use it once or twice, if even if you work with TestNG. All right. What else? Let's see. So that's pretty much like in a nutshell, right? TestNG framework is pretty much capable for Selenium to make the test easier to understand, generating test report easily that will be understood by your team. The main advantage of TestNG is pretty much compared to JUnit, right? JUnit is annotation are very easy to understand because JUnit annotations are different. So let me just give you a overview of that. JUnit versus TestNG annotation. Okay, there we go. Here's your test engine, here's your JUnit, right? So JUnit is missing numbers of annotation, and JUnit is missing more description on the annotation itself. For example, before method is just as before. So how do you know what it is, right? It's just harder um, for you to even explain. Okay, I'm going to be using at before, right? But then how is it working for method? Where does it say, right? So you'll have to go and read what JUnit is offering. But here you kind of just go ahead and read this and it all makes sense because it's basically um, pretty descriptive in terms of naming. So TestNG named their annotation in a way that is easy to understand. It allows you to create parallel test, so you can run your test more than just one way, meaning if your test takes 10 minutes, you can cut it down to 5 minutes by running parallel, right? Because if you use two different parallel nodes. Similar to that, TestNG with a has pretty good integration with Eclipse. So and it generates like result um, in Eclipse that can be viewed directly from Eclipse itself, right? Um, what else? It gives you information like runtime for each method, how long it took, so you can actually use that time to compare for your last report and be able to do also performance analysis. Um, and what else? TestNG can do HTML based report. Again, if your manager doesn't want to bother with let's say non UI, something that looks good, right? For example, like this is HTML, everything that you're seeing here. And if you want something like that, you can get the HTML report and you can actually publish it somewhere if you need to. Annotation can be parameterized. We just talked about it. And last thing is that TestNG data provider is the is the way to parameterize, right? We pass on different data to run our test multiple times. Any question with TestNG? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. So TestNG, like I think that sums it up. The only thing that I feel like we're left off is the data provider. So I'll let that Up to you guys to do some study on that. But other than that, this annotation is pretty easy to read and be explained. Okay, with that said, now let's talk about a little bit more into what BDD is, Cucumber is, and we're just going into new framework. So this is going to be your second framework, uh, which is behavior-driven development, right? And why do I pretty much recommend learning BDD? And there's numbers of things. Um, Not just because you're using BDD framework, but also when you join a company and you're going to see something called acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria is basically what? Can anybody here ever read anywhere acceptance criteria? Acceptance criteria is basically just a requirement, right? Requirement or user story, right? Let's say. And what acceptance criteria does is that it explains what the user will see. It explains the user point of view, right? What the user wants. For example, it explains in features. Features is this. Features, let's say login feature, for example, login. And then it will have scenario. Scenario, for example, scenario 1, which is this. As a valid user, I would like to log in, right, using my valid password, right? Then given a user visited login page, sorry, when a user enters user name, password, and clicks enter, then the user should so that is one, right? That is one test case. The next test case will be scenario number 2, right? Which will be when a user enters valid but invalid. Invalid password, right? Okay, valid username. Okay, well, okay, oh goodness, what am I doing? Enters valid username, but then invalid password. This changes, right? Then user should not be logged in, right? And see a user-friendly message. Message can be parameter, and it's can like, please enter a. Make any sense? So now tell me one thing. Does it look very easy to understand or no?
Yeah, for stakeholder side, yeah, it does.
Right. So now who writes this? Who writes this acceptance criteria? Just make a guess because I don't expect you guys to know since we didn't do this class.
A business analyst.
Right. Business or product, right? Now, it would make sense if tester creates this, right? Then your role changes, right? That means you're going to be a BSA role, meaning you are a business intelligent. You're pretty much a business analyst and QA at the same time. So they call BSA, business intelligent, or yeah, business analyst, let's say. But it's there are roles like that, and the title is actually BSA. I don't know what BSA stands for. 1 second. Forgot BSA. Business system analyst. Okay, there we go. So BSA role is basically if you happen to write this before the developer start working on, and then you're even testing this after he's done, then you are a business system analyst. Okay, meaning you do testing and you write the requirement. Now, there is a possibility that you will be doing this. So just keep your mind open. Don't jump into conclusions saying, okay, they're making me do everything. you might be doing this role, right? So in the interview, if they ask you, hey, are you comfortable writing some of the requirement? Because, we're looking for somebody who's going to be able to do some help with the writing acceptance criteria. Then you can say, well, I did that in my past. I had a BSA role where I had to write the requirement and then test it at the end, right? Um, so that definitely gives you some talking point in your interview, and you can actually explain what it is. So acceptance criteria, the reason why I choose BDD, again, this is part of BDD, behavior driven development, right? And then we got TDD here, and I'll talk about that. Okay. Today, right now we're covering BDD, so just don't get confused with this too. I'm going to explain this in a bit. So basically, behavior-driven development, why I pretty much like it so much is because the requirement is easy to understand, and we call it acceptance criteria. The business or product team, they create these scenarios, and these scenarios, each scenario will be a test case for you, right? So there is a chance that you don't have to do any extra work. Just go ahead and test them and you're done. Number one. Number two is that if they miss a test scenario, then you can add it, right? So I know for a fact, working in a team, you're going to see that business analysts, when they write the test scenario, they will miss one or two, right? They will definitely miss one or two. So you just write them, you just say, hey, you're missing one scenario. I added, please just review. If you see anything that doesn't make sense, just let me know. And that's it. So you can let them know that, yes, you're missing something. It's just about things like that, anything to find a bug, right? For example, if they don't write something here, it doesn't mean you cannot find a bug, right? If you have another scenario in mind, and even if you don't write it down, you test it physically on a web page, and you're able to find the bug, then yes, they will appreciate the bug, right? Because you found it, it wasn't even written on the requirement, and later you can add them. But your 50% of the work at all times will be done because they will write this for you. And the good reason why you shouldn't be writing this is because number one thing is that as a QA, unless you're a BSA, that's different, right? That means you are also a business analyst and also a tester, okay? But if you're a QA and you're writing this, then you are defining what the requirement should be, right? And we do not do that because remember, we don't define what the product should be, right? It's coming from business. So if you find yourself where they just blindly asking you to write this, and just say, look, I don't think QA should be defining what the product should be, right? Because the business and the product team, their only job is to come up with the requirement, right? So they should be the one who's doing it, and prioritizing also they should be doing it, so that way in a sprint we can work on the requirement. So developer does their part, and then we do our part, which is testing. But BDD also helps on automation, and that's the main important seller. But right now, let's say even if you get this right, you would be able to go and navigate through the application without even writing a test case. This is just scenarios that you have, right? So that is the beauty of BDD. And lastly is that when you write your automation test, you can write it in plain English too, right? So let me just show you how it looks like. Let's go to Cucumber real quick. And we're going to build one. Not today, but we're going to build one. Let's see. Let me just find an example. Okay, learn BDD. Okay. There is no example. What? They had it. Cucumber, Jira, Cucumber Studio. Okay, ebook. Maybe that might have it. Okay, in Java, Cucumber. Okay. Okay, let's go into this 10 minutes. Okay. All right. So you see, this is the exact way you're going to be writing your test, right? Once that is done, then you're going to be writing. So for example, like the first thing first, you do a dry run, right? Dry run meaning you just write your test in plain English. It doesn't have any code. Okay. Once you do a dry run, it will tell you like, hey, one is undefined, right? This is what happens. And it will say, okay, today is Sunday, for example, you see somewhere right here, given today's Sunday, and it doesn't have any code. And it says, this is write code here, right? So it gives you this template right here that you should be using to write your code right here, exactly right here, to make today's Sunday. And then similarly, all of the step will have their step definition within. So we write our code, but then we express our test cases or test steps in plain English, which is one of the reason why maintainability is so easy, right? Because what's happening is that when you look at your code, you immediately understand what they do, right? So it's easy to read. And also your product owner, your business team, they will they will be able to provide their feedback in terms of if you did the right thing or if you missed anything at all. Okay. Now, given, when, and then. Remember, we just went over this test scenario, given, when, and then. What this keyword means. We got feature keyword, we got scenario keyword, we got given, when, then, and end. Okay. Given we use for background, where we are in the application. But if you are writing automated test and you change this to, let's say, then, the test will still run and it makes no difference, right? The code will still run, okay? But what makes a difference is that it looks horrible for your eyes, but also it doesn't make sense. It needs to be like, given needs to be the background. And then when is basically the action that you're doing, right? The user action. And then should be the outcome of the user action. Then should be like, okay, I'm going to verify this. This is the verification. Then should be the verification of the scenario. Now, given, what if you have more to the given? Then you can just keep adding and a user do this, right? And then and a user do that, right? So you can add as many as and you need to make things better. But given is something, remember the convention here, right? Given will be where you are in the application. As a user, I am on the login page, right? So that should be given for sure. As a user, I am clicking on this and that. That means you're doing some action, that it should be when. And then if you're saying, okay, I want to assert this, I want to assert that, I want to verify this, I want to verify that, then it should be then. Okay, that is the convention of given, when, and then. Okay, we got scenarios like, for example, sorry, we got feature is the whole file. Okay, this is the whole file. When you write a feature, that will be the whole file. Anything after semicolon, like this line, is just a comment. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't run as a code. For example, scenario, this line does not run as a code, only this. Anything that comes with given, when, then, and end, also a star. A star, I do this, right? So anything that comes with these guys right here, given, and, when, then, and star, it must have code behind it. Okay. Scenario, this is just you're explaining what this scenario will do. What is the end goal? What is the objective of this scenario? Right. In this case, we say invalid password, right? So this one is valid password. This was for invalid password scenario. And then we have ourself. Okay, so we explain feature. Then we have few more keywords. The other one is background. Background is for setup, right? Given I am on, like, given I create a valid user in DB, right? For example. So what's happening here is that background runs once for each scenario. no matter what. You cannot change this. Background will run before this scenario once, and then also before this scenario, before running this scenario once automatically, even if you don't run this. If you run this, it will run background first, okay? So background is another kind of keyword that we use in Cucumber file. Now scenario, we got scenario, but what about the similar compared to data provider? We have another thing called scenario outline. Scenario outline is basically similar to data provider, like how we pass on data, right? So now this is a test, for example, right? And scenario outline, what it does is, given I am on home, let's say Amazon, for example, and I search for, in this case, you're gonna be leaving this blank, right? We're gonna fill this up later. And then I should see, again, same thing, because we're about to parameterize this. And let's say when. So now, because it's scenario outline, it will tell you to create a table, right? Where the data should be coming from. So table, we call them examples, okay? Just remember that this is not an example. This is actually a keyword that Cucumber recognizes. That means that you're going to be creating a table. The way we create a table in Cucumber is by using pipe. These are pipes, right? So one for we're going to create for product that we're searching. And then second, we're going to be creating result. So let me just give it a nice spaces so we can kind of see what it looks like real quick. And then we're gonna, think about me creating a plan for us to automate this. We're gonna be automating this, but we're writing ahead of time, coming up with a plan, right? Product, let's say, for example, you wanna look for MacBook Pro. So that is your one. And then result, you should be seeing the MacBook Pro, right? It's pretty much same, because if the result, you're gonna verify if that shows or not, right? And very similar to that, you have, let's say everything Apple product, I guess iPhone. So now these tests right here, now you have to provide this, right? Product. This is where it's going to grab the product, and then result is going to be grabbing from here. Okay. And assuming you're going to be writing your code underneath. What's going to happen is when you run this, it's going to run how many times? Who wants to guess? All right, it's going to be running twice, only 2 times. Okay, this is one row and this is second row. If I add one more underneath, it will run 3 times. If I add one more, it will run 4 times. So you can already probably imagine what is the use case for this. How can you use this? When should you be using this type of scenario? Okay, it's all about knowing your tool. This is the tool that you're going to be using. So this is how you should be using if you ever face something that require multiple data, right? So that is pretty much a little bit about Cucumber, right? Just the overview of Cucumber, scenario outline. We got scenarios, we got background, we got features, and we got acceptance criteria. The way that we're going to be using, same thing, Maven repository. We're going to be going to Maven. We're going to say, hey, we need Cucumber now, right? And now Cucumber, we got Cucumber JVM, Cucumber JUnit. So we're going to need some of these, not just one, because we're going to be using multiple packages. Even we're going to be using Cucumber Core. So you're going to see the next time we meet, we're going to create a framework where today is going to be short time for us to like dive into a framework, but just do a little bit of research what Cucumber is, how can it help the team, and what does the market look like for Cucumber anyways, right? So out there is a lot of company that is looking for people with Cucumber experiences, and people are moving to Cucumber. Also out there is a lot of company moving into a tool called Cypress, right? Cypress is a Java script-based framework, and is very easy to learn. Okay. Um, the idea behind of Cypress is that it is okay. Obviously, Cypress is brand new. It came out like not a couple years, I think, a couple of years ago, and Cypress is basically a single tool for everything, right? You don't have to go to Maven and find things. It's already done for you, right? Um, and um, it basically doesn't need any extra work. When you set up, it's done, ready to go, and you will be able to start automating right away. It also is faster than Selenium. It is a little bit faster than Selenium, but sometimes remember, speed is something that we can also compromise if the test is stable. If the test is not stable, then speed is something that you should not be compromising. And lastly, if your application is slow and Cypress is going hard on faster, then it will create unnecessary failures. So obviously pros and cons are there. But Cypress is also something is brand new. A lot of companies, they don't have any idea. So if you can like know like pretty much a little bit of Cypress, then you can still get a job. So we can think about that. I'll probably put Cypress on some of you guys' resume, and ask you guys to kind of learn a little bit. Cypress is something that I used in one of my team. I had to bring in Cypress for the entire team, but I didn't like as much as I like Cucumber, right? Again, the reason why, because this is a brand new tool and a lot of support is missing. The reporting is horrible for Cypress. Um, and it's just not as compared, I guess it's not compared to what you can do with open source BDD, meaning you can create the open source tool using Selenium, Cucumber, and JUnit far better than Cypress. So I guess, companies are jumping right into it because it's JavaScript based and it's faster. So many companies out there, they like JavaScript because, it's is the language that is on the front end anyway, right? So a lot of trick that you can do with JavaScript that you cannot do with Java simply, right? Um, so that is another reason, right? And the Cypress allows you to do some things that Selenium cannot even do, right? There are a few features. If I explain to you, you guys will not understand, right? It's basically injecting values, injecting pretty much faking server response that Cypress can do, right? It can fake server response. That means you can create test data without having to even touching your database, okay? Um, so that's maybe another reason why companies are jumping right into Cypress. Then we got, like I said, Cucumber is the first superior so far that I feel. We got the TestNG framework that people uses, but once you learn about Cucumber, you will fall in love with it, and you're probably not gonna want to go back to TestNG. Um, so if you have any doubt about TestNG, go back this week. Just I'm not gonna go back to TestNG anymore anyway. But I am going to look into how many people finished the last project that I asked you to finish, right? So I know there are many of you guys finished, and there are a few people that did not finish. So I will basically go and pretty much discuss with Shantabai and see how many, because he's the one who's tracking. We're going to be basically just talking about it and see how many people didn't finish and reach out to those people. Next week, we're going to start with Cucumber framework. We're going to write our first framework, write first 2 test cases, and then we're going to have a new project. Okay. And I'm going to give you guys that project immediately, right? So once we finish, and the other thing is I have a YouTube video for Cucumber. So if you guys want to like kind of get up to go ahead of everybody, then if you go to YouTube, let me see if I kind of took it off or is it there. If it's still there. Right, learn Cucumber in 15 minutes, right? Something like that. I just gotta, let's see if it shows up. Let me do a real quick search. Okay, well, let me find my video. I'm gonna share right now, and 10 or 15 minutes. There is a lot of people are creating frameworks, doing 10, 15 minutes. Playlist channel. What happened to my channel? Can't find my videos. 1 second. Okay, found it, but it's so I made it private, right? I don't want people, the whole world to see it. Let me just copy the link and give you guys. All right, so I'm going to share in the group. Okay, so I shared that YouTube video in our group, right? That's a 15 minutes only. So spend some time on it, learn a little bit about the cucumber, and the next time we meet, it'll be easier for you to understand how cucumber works. I don't know if you guys can see my screen still. Okay, yeah, you guys can.
Can't really open the video because it says it's private.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't? Okay.
No.
Let me make it not private for the time being. 1 second. Options. If I click on it. Okay, no wonder it didn't show up when I searched for it. Okay, so now it should be good. Copy. Let me see if I can open it myself.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. Perfect. Okay, good. All the XML stuff I already explained. The XML is coming from the Maven repository. So pause it there and get the XML from here, one at a time. All right. With that said, let me now talk about the marketing, because this is, again, like, it takes a lot for somebody to decide and say, okay, I'm going to go out there and start doing interviews, right? So I feel like, here and there, we need to talk about how the marketing will go and what should we be doing, right? What should we be doing to prepare ourselves.